If you want to understand why oncologists are quietly starting to pay attention to one specific compound that makes cancer cells metabolically vulnerable while simultaneously creating an environment where beneficial gut bacteria thrive, don't look at the latest immunotherapy drugs. Don't look at expensive probiotic supplements. Look at what you can add to your morning coffee for less than 15 cents that fundamentally changes your cellular terrain. Here's something that will stop you cold. Right now, inside every single person watching this, tiny clusters of abnormal cells are trying to establish themselves as tumors. This isn't speculation. This is documented biology. Your immune system identifies and destroys these precancerous cells every single day. But cancer cells have a metabolic advantage. They consume glucose at rates up to 200 times higher than normal cells. They thrive in inflammatory environments, and they actively suppress the immune signaling that would otherwise mark them for destruction. What researchers have discovered over the last decade is that cancer is not just a genetic disease. It's a metabolic disease. And the metabolic environment you create through daily dietary choices either feeds cancer's growth machinery or systematically dismantles it. I'm an emergency medicine physician and cancer metabolism researcher. And after spending nearly 30 years studying the intersection of nutrition and oncology, I've come to understand something that quietly contradicts the conventional wisdom about cancer prevention. We've been so focused on identifying carcinogens to avoid that we've almost completely overlooked how certain compounds actively starve cancer cells by disrupting the metabolic pathways they depend on to survive. Most people think cancer prevention is about avoidance. Don't smoke, limit alcohol, avoid processed meat, minimize toxin exposure. And those things matter. But what almost nobody discusses is the offensive strategy. The compounds you can introduce daily that make your body a hostile environment for malignant cells, while simultaneously strengthening the biological defense systems that identify and eliminate them. And one of the most powerful compounds in this category isn't exotic. It's not expensive. It's sitting in most people's kitchens right now, but they're consuming it in a form that destroys most of its anti-cancer activity. Before I reveal what it is, let me address the obvious skepticism, because I would share it. The wellness industry has spent years promoting coffee as everything from a miracle weight loss aid to a cognitive enhancer, which has understandably caused a lot of people to dismiss coffee-related health claims as marketing hype. But the research on coffee and cancer that exists now is not testimonial. It is peer-reviewed, mechanistic, and increasingly well-replicated across multiple cancer types. Here's what we know. Researchers now estimate that up to 40% of all cancer cases are directly linked to lifestyle and dietary choices, not genetics. That means the food decisions you're making 3 times a day are either building a cellular environment where cancer cannot survive or slowly handing it everything it needs to grow. Think of cancer cells like invasive weeds in a garden. You can try to pull them out one by one after they appear, which is what conventional cancer treatment does. Or you can change the soil composition, the pH balance, the nutrient availability, so that weeds can't establish themselves in the first place while the plants you want thrive. That's metabolic terrain optimization. And it's exactly what the right coffee compounds do. Now here's where it gets critical. Not all coffee delivers these benefits. The way most people prepare coffee, the timing of when they drink it, and especially what they add to it, often cancels out or even reverses the anti-cancer effects. I see this pattern constantly. People drinking coffee loaded with sugar, artificial creamers, and flavorings, wondering why they're not seeing the health benefits the research describes. Let me walk you through exactly what happens at the cellular level when you consume properly prepared coffee, because understanding the mechanisms is what separates this from wishful thinking and makes it clear why the research is so compelling. Mechanism 1, cancer cell glucose starvation through metabolic pathway disruption. Coffee contains over 1,000 bioactive compounds, but one of the most significant for cancer metabolism is chlorogenic acid. This is a polyphenol antioxidant found in high concentrations in coffee beans, particularly in lighter roasts where it hasn't been degraded by excessive heat. When you consume chlorogenic acid, it gets absorbed in your small intestine and distributed throughout your bloodstream. Here's what makes it remarkable for cancer prevention. Chlorogenic acid inhibits an enzyme called glucose 6-phosphatase. This enzyme is responsible for the final step of glucose production in your liver and the final step of glucose release into your bloodstream. Cancer cells are metabolically addicted to glucose, Unlike normal cells, which can efficiently burn fat for fuel, cancer cells rely almost exclusively on glucose through a process called aerobic glycolysis, also known as the Warburg effect. This is one of the hallmarks of cancer metabolism. Cancer cells consume glucose voraciously, even when oxygen is available, which is metabolically inefficient but allows rapid proliferation. When chlorogenic acid inhibits glucose 6-phosphatase, it reduces the amount of glucose your liver releases into circulation. Think of it like restricting the fuel supply to an engine that only runs on premium gasoline, while your normal cells, which can run on multiple fuel types, switch seamlessly to burning fat. Cancer cells don't have that flexibility. Restrict their glucose supply, and you restrict their growth capacity. Researchers at the University of Southern California studied the effects of fasting-mimicking diets combined with chemotherapy, and found that glucose restriction made cancer cells up to 5 times more vulnerable to treatment while protecting normal cells. The chlorogenic acid pathway produces a milder but consistent version of this effect that you can activate every single morning. Mechanism 2: cancer cell apoptosis through oxidative stress reversal. Here's a paradox that confuses most people. Cancer cells produce massive amounts of oxidative stress through their hyperactive metabolism, but they're also more vulnerable to additional oxidative stress than normal cells are. It's like they're already operating at maximum capacity, and any additional burden overwhelms their defenses. Coffee contains exceptionally high concentrations of antioxidants, higher than almost any other beverage, including tea or red wine. These antioxidants, particularly quinides formed during the roasting process, neutralize the free radicals that damage DNA and trigger the mutations that can lead to cancer initiation. But here's where it gets fascinating. At the same time, coffee is reducing systemic oxidative stress. The chlorogenic acid and caffeic acid compounds selectively increase oxidative stress inside cancer cells specifically. They do this by disrupting mitochondrial function in cells that are already metabolically stressed. Normal cells have robust antioxidant systems and can handle this mild pro-oxidant effect without any damage. Cancer cells, already operating at the edge of their oxidative capacity, cannot. The result is that cancer cells undergo programmed cell death, a process called apoptosis, while normal cells remain completely unaffected. A landmark study from Harvard Medical School analyzed data from the Nurses' Health Study and the Health Professionals' Follow-Up Study, following over 187,000 participants for over 20 years. They found that people who consumed 4 or more cups of coffee daily showed a 20% reduction in overall cancer mortality. When they looked at specific cancer types, the effect was even more pronounced. For liver cancer, 6 or more cups daily showed a 60% reduction in lethal cancer progression. That's not marginal. That's a clinically significant protective effect that rivals many pharmaceutical interventions. Mechanism 3: immune surveillance enhancement through gut microbiome modulation. Your gut microbiome is not separate from your immune system. It is a critical component of your immune system. Approximately 70% of your immune cells reside in gut-associated lymphoid tissue. The composition of bacteria in your intestines directly determines how effectively your immune system can identify and destroy abnormal cells, including cancer cells. Here's what most people don't understand about the microbiome in cancer. Certain bacterial strains produce metabolites that enhance immune surveillance, the process by which your immune cells patrol your body looking for cancerous cells to eliminate. Other bacterial strains produce inflammatory compounds and toxins that impair immune function and create the chronic inflammation that fuels cancer growth. Coffee, particularly the polyphenols and melanoidins it contains, acts as a powerful prebiotic. These compounds survive digestion and reach your colon intact, where they selectively feed beneficial bacteria, including Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus species, while inhibiting pathogenic strains. But there's a second mechanism that's even more important. Coffee compounds increase the production of short-chain fatty acids, particularly butyrate, by your gut bacteria. Butyrate is one of the most important metabolites for colon health. It's the primary fuel source for the cells lining your colon. It strengthens the intestinal barrier, preventing toxins from entering circulation. And it has direct anti-cancer effects by inhibiting histone deacetylases, enzymes that cancer cells use to silence tumor suppressor genes. Researchers at the Institute for Scientific Information on Coffee conducted a systematic review of 16 studies examining coffee consumption and gut microbiome composition. They found that regular coffee consumption increased beneficial bifidobacterium populations by an average of 38% and increased bacterial diversity, a key marker of microbiome health, by 22%. Think of your microbiome as a garden ecosystem. Coffee provides the fertilizer that beneficial species need to outcompete the harmful ones. And when beneficial bacteria dominate, they produce the metabolic signals that keep your immune system operating at peak cancer surveillance capacity. Mechanism 4. Inflammation suppression through NF-kappa B pathway inhibition. Chronic inflammation is one of the most significant drivers of cancer development. When your body exists in a state of persistent low-grade inflammation, it creates an environment where cancer cells can evade immune detection, resist apoptosis, and metastasize more easily. The master regulator of inflammation in your body is a protein complex called NF-kappa B, nuclear factor kappa light chain enhancer of activated B cells. When NF-kappa B is activated, it enters the nucleus of your cells and turns on genes that produce inflammatory cytokines, the chemical messengers that recruit immune cells and perpetuate inflammation. In healthy acute inflammation, like when you have an infection, NF-kappa B activation is appropriate and protective. But in chronic inflammation, persistent NF-kappa B activation creates the inflammatory soup that cancer cells exploit. Coffee compounds, particularly cafestol and kawal, which are diterpenes found in coffee oils, are potent NF-kappa B inhibitors. They prevent this inflammatory transcription factor from entering the cell nucleus and activating inflammatory gene programs. Additionally, these same compounds activate a pathway called NRF2, nuclear factor erythroid 2-related factor 2, which is your body's master antioxidant defense system. NRF2 activation produces enzymes that neutralize inflammatory free radicals and protect DNA from damage. The combination of NF-kappa B suppression and NRF2 activation creates a profound anti-inflammatory effect at the cellular level. And because cafestol and kawal are found in coffee oils, the preparation method matters enormously. Filtered coffee removes most of these compounds. Unfiltered coffee, like French press or espresso, delivers them intact. Researchers at Baylor College of Medicine examined the effects of coffee diterpenes on colon cancer cell lines and found that kawal induced apoptosis in cancer cells at concentrations easily achievable through dietary coffee consumption while leaving normal colon cells completely unaffected. The mechanism involved both NF-kappa B inhibition and direct mitochondrial disruption in malignant cells. So here is the exact morning protocol based on what the research tells us. This is not theoretical. This is the approach that delivers the compounds we've discussed at the concentrations shown to produce measurable effects. You need high-quality coffee beans, preferably organic to minimize pesticide residue, and preferably medium roast. Light roasts preserve more chlorogenic acid. Dark roasts create more beneficial melanoidins. Medium roast gives you both. Grind your beans fresh immediately before brewing. Coffee's beneficial compounds, particularly the volatile antioxidants, degrade rapidly once the bean is ground. Pre-ground coffee that's been sitting for weeks has lost a significant portion of its bioactive potential. Use a French press or espresso preparation method, not a drip coffee maker with paper filters. Paper filters trap the coffee oils containing cafestol and kawal. You want those oils in your cup because they're carrying the anti-inflammatory and anti-cancer diterpenes we discussed. Here's the critical addition that multiplies the benefits. Add 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon to your coffee. Not cassia cinnamon, which is what most grocery stores sell. Ceylon cinnamon, which you can identify by its lighter tan color and delicate layered structure when you break a stick. Ceylon cinnamon contains exceptionally high concentrations of cinnamoldehyde and procyanidins that synergize with coffee's anti-cancer effects. Cinnamon compounds enhance insulin sensitivity, which reduces circulating insulin and IGF-1, both of which are growth factors that cancer cells exploit. Cinnamon also inhibits angiogenesis, the formation of new blood vessels that tumors need to grow beyond microscopic size. Stir the cinnamon directly into your hot coffee. It doesn't dissolve completely, which is fine. The compounds are fat-soluble and will bind to the coffee oils. Let it steep for 2 to 3 minutes, then drink. Timing matters significantly. Consume your coffee 30 to 60 minutes after waking, not immediately upon waking. Here's why. Your body produces a natural cortisol spike, called the cortisol awakening response, within the first 30 minutes of waking. Drinking coffee during this spike creates cortisol-caffeine interaction that can increase jitteriness and reduce the beneficial effects. Wait until your cortisol naturally begins to decline, then introduce the coffee. Drink it black or with a small amount of full-fat organic cream or coconut oil. The fat enhances absorption of the fat-soluble beneficial compounds. Do not add sugar, honey, or artificial sweeteners. Sugar directly feeds cancer cells and creates the insulin spike that promotes cancer growth. You would be simultaneously activating anti-cancer pathways with the coffee while feeding cancer with the sugar. It's metabolically counterproductive. Consume 2 to 4 cups daily, spread throughout the morning and early afternoon. The research showing the strongest cancer protective effects consistently appears in studies where participants consumed 3 or more cups daily. 1 cup provides benefits. 3 to 4 cups provides the concentration of compounds where we see measurable cancer risk reduction. From clinical practice, here are 6 details that most people miss and that make the difference between partial results and transformative ones. First, stop drinking coffee after 2 p.m. Caffeine has a half-life of 5 to 6 hours. Coffee consumed late in the day will disrupt your sleep architecture, and poor sleep is one of the most significant cancer risk factors because it impairs immune function and increases systemic inflammation. Second, never drink coffee on an empty stomach if you have gastroesophageal reflux or a history of ulcers. The chlorogenic acids that provide cancer protection also stimulate gastric acid secretion. If you have digestive vulnerabilities, consume coffee with or after a small meal containing protein and fat. Third, if you're sensitive to caffeine, start with half-caff by mixing equal parts regular and decaffeinated coffee. Many of the anti-cancer compounds we discussed exist in both caffeinated and decaffeinated coffee. You'll still get substantial benefits with reduced caffeine load. Fourth, rotate your coffee source every few months. Different growing regions, different bean varieties, and different roasting profiles provide slightly different polyphenol compositions. Rotation ensures you're getting a broader spectrum of beneficial compounds and reduces the risk of accumulating any contaminants from a single source. Fifth, store your beans in an airtight container in a cool, dark place, not in the refrigerator. Temperature fluctuations create condensation that degrades the beans. Whole beans stored properly maintain their beneficial compounds for weeks. Ground coffee degrades within days. Sixth, hydrate adequately throughout the day. Coffee is mildly diuretic. Dehydration impairs the detoxification pathways in your liver that process and eliminate damaged cells and metabolic waste products. Drink at least 8 ounces of water for every cup of coffee consumed. Now let me give you the 5 mistakes that will cancel the benefits and potentially reverse them. Mistake 1. Adding sugar-flavored syrups or non-dairy creamers loaded with inflammatory seed oils and corn syrup. These additions create the exact inflammatory, high-glucose environment that cancer cells thrive in. You're negating the anti-cancer effects while actively feeding malignant metabolism. Mistake 2. Using low-quality coffee contaminated with mold toxins. Coffee is one of the most heavily pesticide-treated crops globally, and improper storage creates mold growth that produces mycotoxins including ochratoxin A, which is carcinogenic. The money you save buying cheap coffee you pay back in toxin exposure. Mistake 3. Drinking coffee with high carbohydrate meals, particularly refined carbohydrates or sugar. The insulin spike from the carbohydrates overwhelms coffee's insulin sensitizing effects and creates the glucose flood that feeds cancer metabolism. Mistake 4. Relying on coffee while maintaining an otherwise inflammatory diet, high in ultra-processed foods, industrial seed oils, and refined sugars. Coffee is powerful, but it's not magic. It creates anti-cancer effects in the context of a whole food, nutrient-dense diet. It cannot overcome the metabolic damage from standard American diet consumption. Mistake 5. Expecting coffee alone to prevent cancer without addressing the other pillars of metabolic health, including sleep quality, stress management, movement, and toxin exposure. Cancer is a multifactorial disease. Coffee addresses several critical pathways, but comprehensive prevention requires comprehensive lifestyle optimization. Let's lock in everything we covered because this information could fundamentally shift your cancer risk trajectory. Cancer cells are metabolically vulnerable. They depend on high glucose availability. They exist at the edge of oxidative stress capacity, and they thrive in inflammatory environments. Coffee systematically disrupts all 3 of these dependencies. Chlorogenic acid inhibits glucose release, creating cancer cell fuel restriction. Coffee polyphenols selectively increase oxidative stress in cancer cells while protecting normal cells, triggering malignant cell apoptosis. Coffee prebiotics multiply beneficial gut bacteria by up to 38%, strengthening immune surveillance that identifies and destroys abnormal cells. And coffee diterpenes suppress NF-kappa B inflammatory pathways while activating NRF2 antioxidant defenses. The protocol is 2 to 4 cups of fresh ground medium roast organic coffee, prepared using French press or espresso method, with 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon Ceylon cinnamon, consumed 30 to 60 minutes after waking through early afternoon, black or with minimal full-fat cream. Your body is conducting cancer surveillance every single moment. Abnormal cells are being identified and eliminated constantly. The question is whether you're giving your immune system and your metabolic terrain the tools to do that job effectively, or whether you're inadvertently creating the environment where cancer can evade detection and establish itself. These defense systems exist in you right now. They're built into your biology. They're waiting for the signal. And you can send that signal starting tomorrow morning with a cup of coffee that costs less than $3 and takes 5 minutes to prepare. I need you to do 2 things. First, check right now if you're subscribed to this channel. I see messages constantly from people who've watched dozens of my videos and didn't realize they weren't subscribed. It's free, takes 2 seconds, and it genuinely helps this channel reach more people who are looking for real mechanistic health science rather than clickbait fear-mongering. Second, share this video with someone you care about who's concerned about cancer risk or who has family history of cancer. They deserve to know that prevention isn't just about avoidance. It's about actively creating cellular terrain where cancer cannot survive. Check out my previous video where I go deep on the 3 foods most people eat every day that are actively feeding cancer cell growth and exactly what to replace them with. And in my next video, I'm breaking down the second most underestimated cancer defense mechanism, one that has nothing to do with diet and everything to do with a 20-minute daily practice that increases natural killer cell activity by up to 40%. The body you will have in 12 months, the cellular environment you will be living in, is being built by what you consume consistently starting right now.